The Golden State Warriors want to keep Brandon Podziemski around for the long haul, and according to team general manager Mike Dunleavy Jr., the organization is making a contract extension for the young guard a clear priority. Podziemski, 23 years old, is entering the final stretch of his rookie deal and is on track to become a restricted free agent next summer if the two sides fail to reach an agreement before then. The Warriors want to avoid that situation entirely. They want the deal done sooner rather than later, and Dunleavy made that unmistakably clear during a recent conversation with local reporters. "We really value Brandon," Dunleavy said. "He's a player that, for all the things that he does well, most importantly, he impacts winning. When he's on the court, we're a better team." So anytime you've got a guy like that, you want to be able to keep him around. Obviously, we have multiple ways to do it through an extension and restricted free agency and all that, but we prefer to get it done sooner rather than later. We really like Brandon. He's done a terrific job for us, and he's a big part of our program. Those are strong words from the man who runs a franchise, and they leave little doubt about the team's intentions. But while the desire to extend Podziemski is fully understandable, there's a condition that the Warriors must address alongside any contract offer. They need to give him a drastically bigger offensive role. Podziemski finished the 2025-26 NBA season averaging 13.8 points, 5.1 rebounds, 3.7 assists, and 1.1 steals per game, while playing 28.5 minutes per night across all 82 regular season games. His shooting numbers were solid: 45.5% from the field, 37.1% from three-point range, and 79.7% from the free throw line. On the surface, those are respectable numbers for a young player in his third professional season. But when you look beneath the surface, a troubling pattern emerges. Podziemski posted a usage rate of just 19.6% in 2025-26. That number was only slightly higher than the 17.7% mark he registered the season before. For a player who played every single game of the regular season, never missed a night, and who stepped up repeatedly in the absence of both Stephen Curry and Jimmy Butler, a usage rate that low raises serious questions. It suggests the Warriors have not yet fully committed to making Podziemski a featured weapon on offense. It suggests he is still being treated as a role player despite showing the tools and the mentality of someone who can handle much more responsibility. What makes the situation even more striking is where Podziemski ranked within his own team. He finished sixth on the Warriors in usage rate during the 2025-26 season, behind players like DeAnthony Melton and level with L.J. Cryer. There is no disrespect intended toward either of those players, both of whom contributed meaningfully to the team. But Podziemski has now played over 26 minutes per game in each of his first 3 NBA seasons. He has proven, game after game, that he can handle the ball, create for others, and score in crucial moments. The fact that his usage rate barely moved even when Curry sat for 39 games and Butler missed 44 is a telling sign that the coaching staff has been reluctant to fully open up the offense for him. That must change. If the Warriors are going to sign Podziemski to a long-term extension worth real money, and at this point in his development, that deal will not come cheap, then they owe him a role that reflects his actual value. A contract extension is not just a financial commitment. It is a statement about how the organization views a player's place in the hierarchy. Paying Podziemski like a starter while keeping him in a 6th or lower usage role would be a contradiction that could damage his development and create friction down the road. The Warriors are at a crossroads with this young guard. He has done everything asked of him through 3 seasons. He plays with energy, defends, moves the ball, and competes hard every night. He showed poise and composure during a difficult 2025-26 campaign in which Golden State was consistently shorthanded. Now it is the organization's turn to hold up its end of the bargain, not just by writing the check, but by giving Podziemski the touches, the plays, and the trust that a player of his caliber deserves. The extension conversation is happening. The question now is whether the Warriors are also ready to have the harder conversation about how they use him going forward. At 23 years old, Podziemski is entering what should be the most explosive phase of his career. Young guards who play at his level and receive proper opportunity tend to make massive leaps between their 3rd and 4th seasons. The Warriors have an opportunity to shape his trajectory if they hand him the ball more, run more actions designed to get him in motion, and simply trust him with the game on the line, they might discover they have a future cornerstone on their hands. If they keep him in the same constrained role, while also handing him a big contract, they risk stunning his growth and sending a confusing message to a player who has earned more. The Warriors must get this right, both the deal and the role that comes with it. The NBA released its full 2026-27 regular season schedule on Thursday, and buried inside the calendar is a quiet but meaningful advantage for the Golden State Warriors as they navigate what figures to be a complicated first half of the season without Jimmy Butler. The six-time All-Star is recovering from a torn ACL suffered on January 19th against his former team, the Miami Heat, a brutal injury that wiped out the rest of his first campaign in a Golden State uniform. Now, as the Warriors prepare for a new season, the schedule has handed them something they genuinely needed, a favorable home-road split during the stretch that matters most. Golden State will play 22 of their first 40 games at Chase Center, giving them a slight but important tilt-toward home contest during the early portion of the season. For a team that went 22-19 at home versus 15-26 on the road in 2025-26, that difference is not trivial. Playing at home more often during the period when Butler will almost certainly still be sidelined gives the Warriors a legitimate shot at staying competitive, protecting their record, and positioning themselves for a playoff push once their star forward returns to action. The timeline for Butler's comeback remains uncertain, but sources suggest a return sometime in January is theoretically possible. That would put him at roughly the 12-month mark from when the injury occurred, a reasonable window for recovery from ACL surgery, though every player's body responds differently and the Warriors will not rush him under any circumstances. Butler will be nearly 37 years old by the time he returns, which makes the recovery process all the more delicate. Golden State's priority will be making sure he comes back healthy and ready to contribute at a high level, not just returning on a symbolic schedule. In the meantime, the Warriors will need to survive without their most physically dominant offensive player. Last season's record without Butler on the floor was a discouraging 14-30, a stretch that also overlapped significantly with Stephen Curry's extended absence due to a knee injury that kept him out for 27 consecutive games. The Warriors were, at various points, play without both of their top two scorers and playmakers simultaneously. That context is important. The team was not simply missing Butler. They were stripped down to their depth players for long stretches and still managed to fight. One of the most encouraging segments of next season's schedule falls between late December and mid-January. The Warriors are set to play 10 of their 12 games at home between December 22nd and January 13th. Included in that stretch is a 7-game homestand beginning on December 30th against the Houston Rockets. During that run, Golden State will face the Brooklyn Nets, New York Knicks, Detroit Pistons, Chicago Bulls, Sacramento Kings, and Charlotte Hornets, a group of opponents that, while not to be taken lightly, represents about as manageable a slate as any NBA team could hope for during a stretch when injuries are still limiting the roster. If the Warriors can build real momentum during that window and enter the second half of the season at or above the .500 mark, they will be in strong position to make a run once Butler steps back on the floor. The goal is not merely to survive. It is to arrive at Butler's return with genuine energy, confidence, and a record that gives them something to play for. A team limping into the second half of the season at, say, 18-22 would face enormous pressure. A team sitting at 23-17 would be dangerous. There's also the matter of Moses Moody, the 24-year-old wing who suffered a torn patellar tendon against the Dallas Mavericks on March 23rd and is working his way back. Medical staffs have reported that Moody is making good progress in his recovery, and the Warriors are cautiously optimistic about a return during the second half of the season. Getting Moody back in the rotation will provide another reliable two-way piece in a lineup that currently lacks depth on the wings. His return, whenever it comes, will be a secondary boost that can help Golden State sustain its momentum heading into the postseason stretch. The NBA schedule cannot fix injuries or guarantee wins, but for the Golden State Warriors this coming season, it has given them a fighting chance. The Warriors' front office and coaching staff will need to make smart decisions about load management, rotation depth, and game planning throughout the first half of the season. Every win banked before Butler's return is a win the team will not have to chase down the stretch. Every loss avoided during the brutal road games in November and December is a cushion that could make the difference between a top 6 seed and a play-in scramble. Steve Kerr's ability to squeeze maximum efficiency out of a short-handed roster will be tested from night one. But at least now, looking at the calendar, Golden State has reason to believe the path to the hard part of the season is navigable, and that Butler's return, whenever it arrives, will land at exactly the right moment to launch a genuine playoff charge. Steve Kerr has built his coaching identity on a clear and consistent set of principles. He wants shooters. He wants ball movement. He wants players who can space the floor, cut without the ball, and make quick decisions in a motion-based offense built around the greatest shooter in NBA history, Stephen Curry. That system has produced 4 championships and made Golden State one of the most watchable teams in the sport for over a decade. But now, according to League Insider Mark Stein of the Stein Line, the Warriors are showing what he described as legitimate interest in a free agent guard who looks, on paper, like the exact opposite of a Steve Kerr player, Brandon Williams. Williams, 26 years old, is an unrestricted free agent after spending the 2025-26 season with the Dallas Mavericks. He played 22.2 minutes per game across 66 appearances, producing numbers that raised eyebrows around the league. 13.0 points, 3.9 assists, 2.9 rebounds, and 0.9 steals per game. When those figures are projected to 36 minutes, they become even more impressive. 21.1 points, 6.3 assists, 4.7 rebounds, and 1.5 steals. He shot 47.2% from the field and 79.3% from the free throw line, and he won the 2025 NBA G League scoring title before carving out his role in Dallas. The problem, and it is a real problem for Kerr's system, is his three-point shooting. Williams connected on just 28% of his attempts from beyond the arc last season, a figure that falls well short of the threshold Golden State typically demands from its guards. Kerr has historically been reluctant to give meaningful minutes to players who cannot shoot threes reliably. The most prominent example in recent Warriors history is Jonathan Kuminga, a powerful slasher and scorer who spent years fighting for consistent playing time precisely because his jumper was not trustworthy enough to keep defenses from loading up against him. The Kuminga situation, which ended with a young forward leaving Golden State this past offseason, became something of a cautionary tale about how narrowly Kerr defines which skill sets fit his program. Bringing in Williams would force Kerr to ask, and honestly answer, whether that rigidity still makes sense for this current version of the Warriors. Here is the case for Williams. The Warriors desperately need downhill scoring and rim pressure. In 2025-26, Golden State ranked number 28 in the entire NBA in drives and number 29 in points scored via drives. Those are alarming numbers for a franchise that prides itself on offensive intelligence and efficiency. Williams, meanwhile, was a machine in that exact category. He averaged 10.8 drives per game last season, a number that would have led the entire Warriors roster, and 6.8 points per game on drives, shooting an impressive 51.8% in those situations. Per Basketball Index, he ranked number 3 in the entire league in rim shot creation and finished in the 87th percentile in rim shot making efficiency. He also placed in the 90th percentile in one-on-one shot making with a respectable assist-to-turnover ratio of 2.05. In short, Williams offers something Golden State has not had in abundance: a guard who attacks the basket with confidence, draws fouls, and creates chaos at the rim that can open the floor for Curry and others. With Jimmy Butler recovering from a torn ACL and unlikely to be available until sometime in January, the Warriors are without their most capable downhill driver. The void is real, and Williams fills in a way that few available free agents can. The question is whether Kerr can adapt his system enough to give a player like Williams the minutes and the freedom he needs to actually deliver those results. Spacing Williams next to Curry presents a legitimate floor spacing concern. Opposing defenses may sag off Williams to clog the paint and take away the driving lanes his game depends on. But there are solutions. Playing Williams in lineups alongside multiple shooters, using him as a secondary ball handler in pick-and-roll situations, and designing offensive sets that funnel him toward the basket rather than asking him to shoot pull-up threes could all help compensate for his shooting limitations. If the Warriors sign Williams, his impact will ultimately come down to Kerr's willingness to be flexible. The coach has earned every bit of his legendary reputation, but the Warriors of 2026 are not the Warriors of 2016. The roster is different. The needs are different. And perhaps the system needs to be at least slightly different too. Brandon Williams could be exactly the jolt of aggression Golden State needs. If Steve Kerr is ready to let him play his game, the Warriors are also reportedly interested in veteran forward Georges Niang, according to the same Mark Stein report, as they look to fill open roster spots heading into the new season, where Niang will provide the floor spacing and shooting reliability that fits Kerr's traditional preferences. Williams represents a riskier but potentially higher ceiling gamble. The fact that both names appear together in the same report tells you something about the organization's thinking. They want options at different ends of the profile spectrum, and they're being thoughtful, even if unconventional, about how they address the roster gaps that will define their season before Butler's scheduled return.